Hello, here to do a deck tech for the decks I chose in the mocks this weekend, which is going to be Pioneer, Modern, and Vintage Cube Draft. I've been preparing a lot for it, and excited to show you what I've decided to play with. So in Pioneer, I chose to play this burn deck. I'm not too excited about it, honestly. I really wanted to play some kind of like Uro Omnath deck in Pioneer, but I tried a bunch of different builds for it, and none of them were really clicking for me. I didn't really want to play Burn because I feel like it's one of the most popular and one of the best, honestly, decks in Pioneer. But I felt like people would be pretty prepared for it, which I still think is true. So I tried to avoid playing it, but since none of the Uro decks are doing it for me, I just felt like I should just go with what I felt like is the most consistent deck, and that's Burn. Since you basically are only playing one color. You're basically playing one color, and all your cards are so redundant. So basically all your cards do the same thing. So it just makes the deck really consistent since all your cards are just so replaceable with one another, and they're all so cheap and your mana's so good. You don't really have tap lands or anything. So like that was a big problem I had with the Uro Omnath decks, is just I couldn't get the mana to be that consistent, and having bad mana just adds an extra layer of inconsistency to the deck. Plus I felt like a lot of the Uro decks really struggled if you didn't draw Uro. So I decided to go with this deck since all the cards are so redundant, and it basically does the same thing every time. Plus I actually feel like the sideboard is really good in Burn. Searing Blood is excellent sideboard card against small creatures, obviously. It's basically a 2-for-1 in this deck, since you can kill a creature and deal 3, which is worth a card in Burn. And this card is really nice. The Uro Omnath decks aren't good matchups, but the Vortex helps a lot since it cuts off life gain. And it's also a threat that's resilient to sweepers, like Anger of the Gods and Supreme Verdict and stuff like that, which is very useful against control decks. And Chain to the Rocks lets you deal with bigger creatures at a really cheap rate, which is very nice. I think like basically all 3 of these cards are very powerful. And then to round out the sideboard, you just have 2 Soul-Guide Lanterns to respect the Oops All Spells deck, which is like one of the best and most popular combo decks in Pioneer. Another thing I like about Burn is your burn spells aren't the best in Pioneer, but you have like the best creature base. Like you're basically playing all the same creatures that the modern version plays, except you're just missing Goblin Guide, but you still have Swift Spear, Eidolon, Soul-Scar Mage, all really good cards. And I also kind of like the matchup spread with Burn. There's not really any sideboard cards in Pioneer that just straight up beat Burn, like Core Firewalker or Timely Reinforcements or stuff like that. So you have some bad matchups, but you don't have like any cards you auto lose to most of the time. I mean, Omnath kind of qualifies as that, but that's about like the most potent sideboard card. Yeah. So, but you have some bad matchups, but even in your bad matchups, if you just have a good draw on the play, you could win pretty easily. And there's also a ton of really good matchups. This is another appeal of Burn. Like the Mono Green Devotion deck, I expect to be fairly popular, and that's an excellent matchup for Burn. Basically, any kind of deck with like Llanowar Elves and Elvish Mystic, it's going to be a good matchup since you have so much cheap removal. And also, if like a control deck is underprepared for you, that could also be a really good matchup. So I feel like Burn is just such a consistent and high-powered linear deck that people either have to respect or they just lose to it. And it felt like where I wanted to be in Pioneer. It just felt the best compared to what other stuff I was trying. So, you know, I'm kind of worried about people being prepared, but it is what it is. We'll see if they end up being. You know. Well, please,